Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today we have a really strange one here for you. So at first glance, this is going to look like a ThinkPad. For those of you that are eagle-eyed, you'll probably be able to identify that this is the ThinkPad 570, and it's sitting on top of its UltraBase caddy, which gives it the CD drive and the floppy drive on this side. However, if we are getting super technical, you would be wrong, and I would be wrong to introduce this to you as a ThinkPad. This is actually an LG IBM 570, and oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about. So the first thing that we need to get out of the way is this whole LG IBM thing. This was actually a joint venture that I wrote about years ago for my website, laptopretrospective.com. And that was a really interesting article to write because I discovered in the T41 manual that there was procedures from the factory to essentially put this sticker over top of the ThinkPad logo, more or less, on the chassis. And the article details all about that, some pictures from other people that have provided images of these before I was able to acquire them. And it goes into a whole deep dive, if you will, on who was actually producing these IBM machines. Now, let's talk about the partnership, and I'll be referring to my article a fair bit throughout this because I've already done the research and I don't want to get this stuff wrong. So in 1996, IBM would enter a partnership with LG to essentially break into the Korean market, and what would end up happening is that IBM would have 51% controlling interest of LG-IBM, and they would give LG all of the permission to manufacture their machines, and they would do so under their own branding. There were other accessories that carried the branding, but it was primarily the PC market that would carry that moniker. Now, here's where things get really, really interesting. Is corruption was kind of a thing that happened. There's no nice way of putting it out there. And IBM Korea and LG IBM were no exception. There was also instances of IBM China supposedly getting nailed with this as well, but we're going to be focusing on South Korea today because this is a Korean ThinkPad essentially. You need to understand that this is almost like a cartoon, or like how you would see like a villain be introduced in a superhero movie. Some of these exchanges that are occurring, it's almost hard to believe what exactly was happening, because there would be managers handing shopping bags of money to the equivalent sometimes of like 20,000 US dollars in cash to the managers in the Korean government that would be making these decisions on whether or not to purchase the LG IBM product or another competitor product. And these are happening in the parking lots of restaurants, and then they're actually happening at the manager's apartment building in the parking garage or the parking lot. And it's all to make sure that either IBM Korea or LG IBM are winning these contracts. Now these contracts are worth $13 million, for example, in the installation of a mainframe back in 2002. And then there would be other contracts that would be worth like $1.3 million. There was quite a bit of money on the line here is what I'm trying to say. When things went poorly with especially a specific benchmark exercise that occurred in September of 2000, where LG IBM was looking to sell about 1,500 personal computers, with, again, that $1.3 million, it was required to participate in a benchmark test to make sure that it would meet the quality standards, and there were some problems with the LG IBM computers. So the managers at LG IBM made it right, and they produced a better product. No, I'm just kidding. They gave an inappropriate gift to make sure that LG IBM won the contract. It wasn't really recorded very well in the books, and there was also a lot of free products being handed out, notebook computers to employees to entice them to purchase the IBM products, or specifically the LG IBM products. There were other stories in late or early of November 2001. An employee of the LG IBM's public sector made an improper payment of $9,546 to an employee of the SKGE4 responsible for reviewing the personal computer procurement bids. And of course, this was, again, to provide machines up to 825 computers that were valued at another 1.3 million. So there was a whole lot of this stuff going on, and eventually they got held to task. LG-IBM would essentially dissolve, and there was a lot of money changing hands that probably shouldn't have. And there's a whole court document of all of these allegations that is linked to the article that's on the website there from the Securities and Exchange Commission and the complaint. And it outlines more or less all the stories that I've shared with you, but if you want to read them in detail, see the allegations and what all became of it, that information is available up on laptopretrospective.com. On March 18th, 2011, without admitting or denying the SEC allegations, IBM consented to the entry of a final judgment that permanently enjoins the company from violating books and records and internal blah, blah, blah. And they consented to pay essentially fines and fees as civil penalties for doing this. So they didn't openly admit that they did something wrong, but they paid the fees for doing something wrong, which is interesting. There would be IBM Korea and LG-IBM employees that were fined for this whole kerfuffle, and then pretty much LG-IBM would cease to exist shortly thereafter. Now, one of the other things that, of course, is happening around the same time or toward the tail end of this is in the summer of 2004, they're trying to sell off the IBM PC division, and they can't really honor this contract with LG-IBM because they are going to have enough trouble selling the PC company to any potential buyers. And the only two that were in the running were Texas Pacific Group and Lenovo. And they wanted to ensure that they had control of all IBM markets. And this would be true for purchasing a company that was already established in that area. That would mean LG-IBM would need to be renegotiated or simply cease to exist. And it isn't too hard to see where that kind of made sense. This thing has a kind of a checkered and interesting history. And this is like an original from South Korea. It still has the South Korean IBM image installed on it. The language is primarily in Korean, so there are some pieces that I'm struggling to access, but more or less all the menus are in the same place. So with all that being said, all that interesting history aside, again, suggest you read the article if you want to learn more. Let's actually take a look at what makes a ThinkPad 570 unique. So originally, the ThinkPad 570 was made from April to December of 1999. The 570E was made from February 2000 to 2001. And there was also an i-Series 1157 that shared more or less the same chassis. We are looking at a 12.1 inch or 13.3 inch in the same bezel. This one is the 13.3, and it was either an 800 by 600 or 1024 by 768 display. CPUs were the mobile Pentium 2 300, 333, or 366. It was also available in the Intel Mobile Celeron 366 or 400. The 570E had other configurations that we won't cover today, as well as the i-Series 1157. 64 megabytes of RAM were soldered on, giving you a maximum of 320 megabytes possible on the 570 and the i-Series only, with a 256 stick of SDRAM PC66. And as you can see from this one running, it does have a variety of interesting features. The docking station, or the UltraBase, is kind of one of the first of its mobile generation, but it did give you everything that the 570 left out, because there is no disk drive, there is no floppy, CD, or otherwise. Now, when it comes time to eject this, and it's going to complain at me because of the battery level not being super great, it is a multi-step process. You either need to go in and eject the dock through the system tray, or the very first thing you need to do is actually hit the button down here before you use the eject mechanism to kick this thing off. Now we do have 18% battery, which should be sufficient. So if we press the button first, it turns off. System can be removed from UltraBase. We grab the tabs on either side and disconnect it. We'll take a tour of that in a second because it's equally as interesting. So we do have a slider on the bottom for the brightness control. We have the Korean keyboard present here with English characters in the top left-hand corner. And we'll also notice that there is LG-IBM branding all over this particular device. If we go ahead and close the lid, we can see one of the most iconic features of these devices, the LG-IBM logo, just stuck right on there. Doesn't look terribly great, but there it is. Along the back, we have all of the I/O from where we can connect a floppy drive, serial port, printer port, VGA, mouse. This is our 56K modem, power and Kensington lock slot. On the right-hand side, we have 3 audio jacks, audio in, headphones, and microphone. We have 2 card bus slots currently occupied by the cards that came with this machine. Along the front, we have realistically nothing at all. And on the left-hand side, we have a USB 1.1 port and the 2-stage power button. You have to press down this white button here before you can use the slider, and this stops the device from being turned on accidentally. The other thing to take a look at, of course, is the UltraBase. Now, the UltraBase on this is also an authentic, if you will, LG-IBM product. So if we look at the bottom, it has that LG-IBM branding, making this thing a little on the rare side, and it also has pass-throughs for 2 different kinds of docking stations, so you could put this dock on top of a dock. You'll also note here that this is the locking mechanism to eject both the floppy drive, which is located on this side, and the optical drive located on this side. So this thing is insanely modular. On the inside, we have the ejection tools for the optical bay as well as the battery. So you can actually put a battery for the device inside here if you needed more juice. So you'd raise that tab, open this up, and you see we've got the floppy drive, which we would need to remove. Eject that, and this will look very, very familiar, that connector right there. And then at that point, we can actually put another full-sized battery inside to add additional battery life to this. And then if we want to eject the optical drive by pressing up, pushing out, and there's our optical drive. So those are all the components of the UltraBase, essentially fully disassembled. This was a different era of computing, of latches and bays and things that, you know, we don't really necessarily use anymore, but there they are. All right, so here we have the 570 on its back. We can see the LG-IBM branding, and we can see one reference to ThinkPad 570 in the corner here. In terms of parts, we can remove the battery. The CMOS battery is visible here. If we loosen this screw over here, we can remove the TravelStar IBM hard drive. Nothing particularly unique about that. Switching back over to the Philips, to remove this door here, we can see that our RAM slot is staring us in the face. Remember that this does have soldered RAM on it as well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this LG-IBM ThinkPad 570. It's a unique machine not only because it is a 570, but because it also is not a 570, or at least not a ThinkPad. Even though it's pretty much part for part interchangeable. The only really unique piece, of course, is the keyboard and the branding, the stickers, and all the other logos, if you will. I do encourage you to check the article that I link in the description down below to my website, where I discuss the story of LG-IBM, at least what I know, in a bit more detail. And if you know anything about LG-IBM, I would love to make that story more full and complete, and I would encourage you to reach out, get in touch, and I'm always looking to learn more. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. See ya.